Settle in, guys. This one is a doozy. We pick up outside the door of the northern crypts in the chapel of Saint Brenna. Brenna. I don't know why I said it like that. I'm sorry. I'm in a weird mood. The doorway reads, "Compassion and temperance sustain the light. Greed and hatred bring darkness." The group goes in. They find 6 skeletons on stone slabs, each with a silk cloth over their eyes and 2 citrine gems over them. But even more curious is that all the candles around each slab are still lit, even despite it being very clear that no one's been in here for decades. Noct moves away from the group, our cleric Noct, and starts examining the bodies, recognizing that some of them hold a candle, a snuffer, and a torch, recognizing the symbol of the sacred flame, of course. He also sees that one of them is holding a helm, one is holding a shield, and one is holding a sword. At this point, Morgan enters the room. To her right, back there, she sees a very shiny sword. The sword itself seems to be not admitting. Maybe it's admitting. The sword seems to be emitting a slight glow that doesn't really fit the light of the rest of the room. Ooh, shiny. She moves over to look at it. Noct turns around after having looked at the bodies, and he has determined with Zelda's aid that these candles were used in some sort of ritual that is most likely preventing the haze from reanimating the... But he can't finish his sentence because Morgan grabs the sword and tries to pick it up. The candles blow out, and the skeleton comes to life, succeeding its contested strength roll, yes, against the barbarian, who rolled real poorly. It keeps its sword, yanking it from Morgan's hands and turning it to use against her. It's not really a problem though. Used to these kind of shenanigans with his partner Morgan, Harmon steps up with a sneak attack that does immense damage, knocking him out in one turn, and the bones of the skeleton collapse into a pile right next to the slab. Harmon hands her the great sword, and Noct says he feels like they need to put the body back in its place. So Noct goes about rearranging the body, replacing those 2 gems on the skeleton's eyes. Morgan sees the gems and goes, "Wait, can we keep those?" Remember, her quest is, of course, overwhelming debt, so anything to make money, right? Noct replies with a curt, "You've already stolen enough from the dead." To which Morgan replies with, "I didn't steal it, I just took it." He then gives a soft prayer, and Zelda lights the candles, and the ritual goes back into place, and they can feel the air around the slab change. Probably would have picked up more if they did a better job at perception. Harmon notices a door on the other side, and he moves to inspect it, while Noct moves to look at the helm and the shield and determine that they're not really worth anything. They've been here too long, rusting, and that kind of thing. As the rest of the group then turns towards the door, Morgan moves back to the skeleton. She reaches out, looks back, makes sure they aren't looking, and then grabs the gems. Candles go out. Initiative rolls. Harmon is up first. He spends his entire action sighing and telling Zelda to handle it while he continues to look at the door. He's not interested. Zelda and KYLIE quickly throw some cantrips its way, and then Morgan finishes it off with its own sword. Noct asks to stay in initiative. Not to break the fourth wall here. Being at the end, as clerics are wont to do, he wishes to stay in initiative and decides at the end of battle to cast sleep on Morgan. She falls unconscious to the ground asleep. Noct and Zelda go back to restoring the body with its gems as Morgan just sleeps there on the floor. Harmon gets to actually look at the door now. There aren't any handles, but there's a carving of a dragon and the words that say, "No darkness is eternal, while our faith fuels the flame," capital F. The group begins to search the room for another winch or notch, possibly in the column near them or in the walls. They don't find anything. Morgan wakes up to help the search. Still nothing. Harmon decides to run some experiments. He makes sure some of his teammates are on either side of the door, and he goes upstairs and releases the winch and the immobile rod. The door closes, and he tries to get Zelda and Noct to communicate through the door. They do poorly at listening to each other. He then reopens the door, and they say that no, that other door did not open when he moved the winch back and forth. So they reconvene, and Morgan tries to lift the door. She rolls a natural 20, and she does move it upwards, and boom, it hits on something kind of keeping it in place. She does get the sense that she could hold it open if it were already lifted. There's something there that's keeping it from going all the way up. They decide they must be missing something since they didn't go through all the doors on the floor above. They go back upstairs, taking the immovable rod with them. They walk into a room littered with dust and ashes and urns and skulls. And there are 4 little creatures flitting about. They turn as the group enters and go, "Stop there, meatbag! You're trespassing! You better have brought us something nice, fleshy!" Morgan gets offended and steps up about to say something, but Harmon cuts her off. "Let me handle this, will you?" Morgan sighs, but takes a step back. Harmon asks what they want, and the one in the back says, Dusty, ask him for shinies." Dusty turns towards the group and goes, "We want the shinies." Harmon checks his bag and knows he doesn't have any gems or any even delirium left. Instead, he pulls out a silver coin. He tries to use the light to make it seem shinier than it normally is, and tries to persuade them. He rolls poorly. "You think we don't know what some money is? No, we need gems." Delilah pipes in. She reaches into her pouch and tries to quietly imbue the stones with magic to make them look shiny. Magic stone is the cantrip. Her sleight of hand check fails. "You think we don't know what rocks are, you stupid fleshy?" At this point, Morgan is fed up. She takes the rock from Delilah's hand and chucks it at the Mephit. Yes, a magic stone, so it does a little extra damage. Battle ensues, and they do moderate damage the first couple turns until the Mephits are up. One puts 2 of them to sleep, while the others come up and do breath weapons on those on the ground, making them take full damage, and some of the other people take half damage. But the tides turn after the first round, and the Mephits get very badly hurt, until suddenly it's Nox's turn. Again, at the end of the round. He uses a Twilight ability. I can't remember it off the top of my head. I think it's like a face step type thing, but it also can cause fear. He uses his Twilight Cleric ability to step into position, and he scares one of the Mephits and then uses Thaumaturgy to make his voice boom and says, "Enough!" His scolding works, and the combat ends. He turns to the Mephits and says, "What can we do to make amends and be allowed to passage through here? Surely you have some dumb friends too." And he gives a pointed look, of course, to Morgan. Dusty starts pointing to Smokey while nodding. Yes, him. Yeah, he's dumb. The Mephits gather together and try to confer with each other. With Nox hearing, though, he kind of hears it all. "Shinies for sure. How do we get them to come back, though, with the shinies? We could hold them hostage." "Nah, we can't hold them hostage. Yeah, they're too big and beefy." Finally, they turn. "You must bring us gems!" And the other ones in the back go, "Gems, yeah! But to ensure you return to us, we demand that you leave one item that is precious to you here." The group thinks for a time, until finally landing on Harmon. Harmon decides to leave the head of the Rat Prince, which, side note from the DM, didn't know he was still holding that. This is his first major kill towards his quest. The Mephits go, "Ew, perfect." And they quickly snatch it up, having to use 2 of them to carry it over to a shelf with some other skulls, plop it down, as Harmon demands that they take good care of it and that he will be back. They ignore him, and they begin dressing it up with old, rusty, rotting-looking jewelry as a crown, and they find an old lemon? They find old linen wrappers for a cape, and then Noct, stoic and usually frightening, comes over. I think he needs a staff. Smokey squeals in delight, finds some rotten wood, and places it next to the head too. Harmon and the group move on through the next door, which leads to a second winch. They do some more experimenting, open this one, and listen at both the other door and, of course, by the winch. They make a daisy chain of people to listen for noises and pass down what they hear. They realize that it might actually be opening the door in that other crypt they were in, but they can't be sure, they can't see it. And in the process, Zelda hears voices back from the hallway from whence they have come. She tells Harmon, who relays this back to the rest of the group. Then Harmon moves back up to listen more carefully, and as he's sitting there, he hears, "We'll have to wait until they get here," and the voice is moving further and further away from the door. The group realizes they don't have a lot of time. They move forward in the new direction where they had heard the stone door open and find another crypt. Noct stares Morgan down, and the group forces themselves to move through this room without touching anything and move down the tunnel, where at the end, they see a mummy wandering around and misquoting Sacred Flame script. From the doorway, Noct and Zelda try to relight the candles around the altar, hoping that it will make the mummy return to rest. Unfortunately, the candles are too wet, and also Zelda missed. And this brings the mummy's attention to the person shooting the fireball. The battle lasted 3 deadly rounds. The first one, Harmon marches up and attacks, dealing not as much damage as usual. Delilah and Zelda do normal amounts of damage, and same with Morgan, their magic and magic weapons. But then the mummy goes. She glares at Harmon, who unfortunately not only fails, but fails by more than 5. So he is suddenly afraid, but also paralyzed. As such, he ends up taking the full hit from the rotting fist. This crushes him into the ground. He then fails his constitution saving throw, which gives him mummy rot. A side note, the group does metagame a little bit here, listening to me tell him that he cannot regain hit points. But Noct has a scroll of remove curse that he found earlier by the fountain. He moves forward and uses this and a bonus action healing word to bring Harmon back up. They all take turns again against the mummy. This time Delilah does the most damage with her magic stones, actually. The mummy glares at her, but she shakes it off, not affected by the mummy at all. But Harmon is still the only one in reach. So another rotting fist, another failed save, and Harmon goes down again, gaining mummy rot again. Noct moves to the candles and tries desperately to light them. He manages to do it and say the prayer, but then he realizes it only affects the entity that's inside the candles. He calls out to Morgan, who eagerly grapples the mummy and tosses her back onto the slab. The mummy goes limp, falls onto the slab, knocking off the remains of what looks like a similar rod to the immovable rod that Harmon was using with the winches, except this one is definitely broken. Panic sets in. They don't know anyone who can bring back the dead. They don't know who could remove a curse on Harmon. As they start chatting, Noct says a prayer. His eyes glaze over and a vision, almost like a projection over his vision. He sees a druid surrounded by red trees with red falling leaves that is kind of coaxing a small bird back to life. The image fades and he reveals the vision that he has seen to the rest of the group. Delilah, being of the old gods, asks if she would know anything. She fails her check, she doesn't. And then Zelda asks if she would know of any places to go or travel. Her mind goes back to the night in the tavern with Harmon, where she helped him by casting minor illusion to make a show of the head that Harmon had acquired. During that attempt to impress the patrons, she remembers overhearing someone in the crowd just talking about a druid north of the city who worshipped the old gods, and he was known to be able to bring people back from the dead at a terrible cost. The group decides that this is what they must do, and they have to do it quickly. They must travel north of Drakkenheim. Harmon has stabilized, but unfortunately he cannot gain any hit points. Side note for those keeping track, in 24 hours, a new wave of mummy rot will set in, and his max HP will drop another 10 points, dropping his max HP to 0 and turning his body to dust. If you like what you're watching, consider supporting me on Patreon, the best way to support creators on YouTube. You can get behind the scenes, plus you can get ad-free versions of my videos. Also, live streams, there's shop discounts, hopefully some paper products coming out, definitely a magazine in the works. There's lots of stuff there. Link in the description. Okay, hi. So honestly, this is where I talk bad about myself, but I'm actually kind of proud. In one-shots, I have no problem killing players. It doesn't happen that often because I typically let them be overpowered and silly. I have no problem killing players because it's a one-shot and you're probably never going to see those characters again. But in campaigns, I have a soft spot for characters and the time they put into certain characters. And I also know how it feels, and I don't necessarily want my own characters to die often. I mean, if it fits thematically, whatever. And in 5e, it's pretty easy for characters not to die. So in my last 2 campaigns, although I, talked a big game, I didn't really actually kill anyone. Sure, I knocked a lot down and there were a lot of death saves rolled, but nobody died. Nobody needed revivified most of the time. Nobody was dead and gone forever. I think that's partially because I know that sometimes I will, when the players are having a rough time or making stupid decisions, I will pull punches. I don't fake dice rolls or anything, but I will have, you know, the monster change targets, or I don't hit characters that are already down or just got back up. This time I didn't do that, and I'm kind of proud of myself for not. I mean, I even thought about it in the moment about changing trajectory, and I did have the mummy glare at Delilah, so at least, you know, the potential was there to not kill Harmon a second time, but I kind of knew what I was doing, and I knew if I hit Harmon, he was dead. So that's what I did. That said, they still have a chance to bring Harmon back. He's not dead. So in a way, kind of proud of myself for killing off a character, but also I think this very much helps with the story, right? It helps reinforce that Drakkenheim is a dangerous place. And I did tell them that this is, you know, they could die, which is going to be really bad if, you know, Delilah dies or Morgan dies. I think they will be a little bit more hurt than Harmon will be. That said, I did let them off easy. But it kind of made for a more cinematic ending, if you ask me. They probably would have killed the mummy in the next turn because the mummy only had about 18 hit points. So they had done 20 and 20 damage in the first 2 rounds of combat. So the mummy was dead either way in the next turn. Instead, though, I let Noct remove the reanimation from the mummy with that ritual. And in hindsight, this probably wouldn't have actually worked because everything was still wet and technically there was water dripping from the top. However, he was being clever and I like to reward that. It's not raining outside in Drakkenheim right now, but also this means the mummy's not dead yet. And if they return for the head and the scepter, because they haven't gotten that yet, who knows? I was very good at baiting Morgan. I kind of knew that it would happen. Put a shiny thing there and dare her to touch it. And, you know, that's all you got to do. But I also kind of wanted her to have that weapon because I knew it was a magic weapon and I knew she would need it in the next fight. There are a few other weapons that I'm planning on dropping them if they ever complete the quest that they're on or if they, you know, live. Hopefully that'll all work out. I was also pretty proud of myself. This is a small thing, but I think, which I think most DMs do this already, but I gotta take the wins when I can. I was proud of myself for remembering not to let them look for a winch in that northern crypts. Don't make them roll if there's nothing to find. You know, that's a basic DM thing, but I know there's a lot of new people who watch my channel and stuff, so I'm throwing this in. I guess it's a pro tip, but not really. If you let them roll, it hints that they might be onto something, that there might be something in this room. And so I didn't let them roll. I was just like, nope, there's nothing to find here. The biggest issue this session was that we have Miss Zelda with main character syndrome, and she is, again, she's my niece, she's young and a kid, and I think it's to be expected with kids, and she was doing really well up until this point. I'm not sure what changed, but in this session, she felt that I wasn't listening to her, which I hate doing to my niece, of course, but you have to consider multiple things. One, environment is very loud. My family, if you don't talk loud, you don't get a word in. That's just how it is. Always been. We're just that overly loud family that talks with our hands. The one other thing is we also have a toddler running around who is constantly, you know, running around the table, being a dice goblin.
If they're strong characters, then yes, you want to use the second level spell. If they're not strong,
all right,
you can't go in them.
Delilah, you bringing things for Gammy and Grandpa to look at, distracting the table and the, you know, cleric, aka Dad. The third part of this issue being that the 10-year-old niece is quiet. But while she's complaining that she's not being heard, I think the real issue is she's got main character syndrome. In every aspect, she wants to help, which is not necessarily bad. In this case, it was a very religious environment, and a lot of the other players, you know, stepped aside and let him shine and do his thing. And also, it's my husband. He thinks about his words. He's not like me. He doesn't just ramble and talks at a slower rate. And so you have to give him the space to speak, which I tend to do. I mean, I've lived with him for how long? I had to learn to do that, right? Essentially, I feel like Noct would have the most to say because this is a chapel devoted to his god. Plus, he can learn a little bit more about the religion because I know he doesn't remember anything I gave him pre-sessions. So everyone else was deferring to him, except, of course, Zelda, our 10-year-old, and she wants to help with the strength that Morgan is doing. She is doing some things well, like she is trying to, since she is a magic-focused character with her sorcery, she is using that to her advantage, and in those instances, I think she's doing very well. The only thing I can think of to kind of help with this is to only allow her to do things she's proficient in, so to push that proficiency, so any skill that she has proficiency in, she can offer that up. The problem is I think she'll try to do everything with magic, so, and she's not not wrong. Magic should allow you to do everything, right? But there are limitations. And I think part of it too will be me when she does suggest something, pretty much saying, you try that, but nothing happens, or, you know, just not actually giving her the opportunity to roll and kind of teaching her that way that like not everything is going to yield results and you don't have to input on everything. But also, who knows? Like next session, it might be a little bit different because up until this point, she really hasn't had an issue. Maybe that was the easiest thing to latch onto, saying that she wasn't being heard when it could have been something else entirely. I do know that I really have to direct my focus, and it is hard. They're all talking at each other all the time, discussing between each other too a lot, and discussing with Zelda a lot while I'm trying to describe things that are happening. And so it's very distracting. And of course, I just have started to learn to tune their chatter out, which would effectively mean I'm tuning Zelda out as well. And I also have just a table of spotlight hogs. We're kind of all used to that. And I think as a DM, I've gotten pretty good at being like, okay, here's a spotlight for everyone in a little section of time, you know? And I was trying to offer Noct more of the spotlight this time than anybody else, so I could have been ignoring her. But it could also have been she was annoyed with Morgan for being a murder hobo, because everyone was annoyed with her being a murder hobo, though everybody was also amused. I even have considered doing something that maybe will reward players for being more collaborative and working together. I'm really loving Drakkenheim so far. It's very difficult to bring I really love that it's difficult to bring a character back to life in Drakkenheim at this point. I can only think of 2 NPCs that I know of at the moment at the top of my head. I mean, of course, they aren't going to be level 3 forever, but this is exciting for me. All right, session prep. So they ruined everything I had prepped for it last time. I had so much stuff, which can all still happen, so I'm not really worried. But I had things with rivals, hints about other quests I was going to drop. Nope. But now we're gonna go find someone to res Harmon, so it's fine. I actually kind of wanted to drop hints about the Shrine of Morgan to the players in the next bit anyway, and I planned on threatening the life of one of the characters. It just, you know, moved my plans up a little bit sooner, but the plan was originally to do that after they had found the scepter. So all that stuff is movable, and it's not really a big deal. It's prepped, it's ready. Pull off the bleachers whenever I need it. I don't know sports. Can you tell I don't know sports? They have limited time, only 24 hours before a day passes, and the mummy rat infects Harmon further, and he loses another 10 max HP. So that means he will be exactly at 0. This bit is going to be kind of a race, and I'm loving it already. But we're going to race to the other side towards the forest and ravine where the Shrine of Morgan is. In the book, they mention that Morgan demands a life sacrifice for a resurrection. However, Harmon's not technically dead. He is stabilized. This is where things get weird for me as a DM, because how long does a stable body, you know, stay alive if it can't actively heal, right? I'm treating this kind of like, what is that spell? Spare the Dying or something. Like, that's what I'm kind of treating it as. He's in that in-between state. If the curse isn't removed and he's allowed to heal or healed, he will die. I think that's good enough. I'm bending the rules. I don't care. They're mine to bend. All they need to do, though, is perform greater restoration on Harmon, which our druid friend will know. This does have a diamond material component, however, and our druid doesn't keep diamonds. In the book, they say to resurrect someone, it costs a life, sacrifice, the gems, and a favor to the druid. So that's what we're going to prepare, except for we don't need the life part since it's a little bit lesser of a spell. We still need that rare gem, which we realize with our Mephit encounter that they are a rare commodity and will be for the entire campaign if I can help it. So here are all the things I have planned. Hopefully, as they leave the chapel, they will be approached by the people who are outside, which are the followers of the Falling Flame. They're gonna have a challenge there, of course, to either, you know, convince them there's nothing else in there so they don't go after the scepter. And they will also learn that, you know, maybe Lucretia could revive their fallen friend, that she is in the city. I suspect our players will not take her up on this offer because Delilah would not enjoy that at all. So I predicted that they will probably rush north, but if not, I will prepare an encounter with Lucretia and the Falling Flame people. I think Noct will also push them away from this heretic sect as well. So that'll happen, and then they will rush out north. In the process, they're gonna run into a new party member, aka the replacement for Harmon, so that he may play during this session. He doesn't know it, but he is going to be accosted by mimic furniture when the party finds him. They will make a few checks until they leave the city. Hopefully that's okay. Then they will need to make some survival checks to find the druid, and that will put on time. I do think I'm gonna need a map. Normally I would say, screw it, I don't need a map for this. In case Morgan decides to fight the druid who worships a god of the same name, I hope not. I like making maps anyway, so it's fine. And it'll be a very, very small map, just enough for him and his posse. Since he doesn't need to resurrect Harmon, and assuming everybody arrives within a day, he will offer to do greater restoration, but he has no diamonds, so they're gonna need to either find him a diamond or find him some delirium. Delirium will be the easiest choice, but he will warn them that it'll have complications if they use delirium. And I think this delirium search will happen at, if things go well, dusk. If things go poorly, it will be nighttime in Drakkenheim. And I am excited to introduce a whole manner of craziness. I will be prepping that madness. And you'll get to hear about it in the next one. Bye-bye.